and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Well, our community was ticking with a new emotion the last couple of days, hope. The New Haven Greed was flooded with thousands of people demonstrating for no kings and a new direction in our country. And today we're going to talk about what happened Saturday at that rally and what happens next with three people who made it happen. Kika Matos of Fairhaven is the president of the National Immigration Law Center. State Senator Gary Winfield and Alder Caroline Tanby Smith, who emceed the event. The first two of whom were in the past in this chair hosting New Haven WNHH programs. Well, welcome everyone, and how you doing the 2 days after?
Pretty good. Don't have much of a voice, but
yeah. Happy
so
to be
were you
here.
surprised at how it came off? Was the rally what you hoped it would be? What was your feeling when you saw the crowd and you heard the energy and you saw the march through the streets of New Haven? Kika, you want to start out? Or?
Sure. I was overwhelmed. I thought that given that there was a No Kings rally in June, that turnout would be lower. And I went to both the Hartford rally and the New Haven rally, and the energy was incredible. The creativity of people with signs. There were a lot of signs that were handmade by people, which says to me that people had skin in the game, like they were really investing in the turnout. And to me, it was a beautiful example of what a thriving democracy should look like. People being active, exercising their constitutional rights, and calling this lawless president into account, right? Putting him on notice that authoritarianism is not something that's welcome here.
And Caroline, did you help organize it? You were the MC.
A little bit. I think maybe more accurately, I had a little bit of a window into behind the scenes. And I think that is one of the things that I'm left lingering with, is that this rally that brought thousands of people together was organized by people. It was organized by Janice, Nan, Matt, Jim, a group of individuals who spent long nights, made countless decisions, and really had the courage.
And was
to
this
bring us
Indivisible?
together. Oh, yeah, Greater Westville Indivisible.
And what's Greater Westville?
What is the geographic location? That's
Does
a good
that mean
question.
like Bethany and Woodbridge? Does it mean Beaver Hills and West Rock? Or?
I'm not actually sure their geographic boundaries.
But Indivisible did these, I
yeah.
guess, was responsible for the 25 or
That's
2,600 rallies across the country.
Yep, that's right.
And
exactly.
was this different? The last two, I thought there was something different. Like, weren't the organizers different? The first two rallies we had about this, the similar ones on Saturdays. Like, we always walk up from our synagogue because we don't drive, so we all come as like a big group. And the last two, the crowd seemed similar, but the organizers or something felt different. Like there weren't elected officials speaking at the first two.
I think there's been some overlap. Like, I know Janice also, I think, either helped to organize Hands Off or another, but moral of the story is, I think what should be empowering for all of us is that, 5 to 10 people who have the will to act and bring us together can make that happen. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really powerful. I think it's important for us all to remember that happened because people made it happen, because people organized it, because people had the will to do it.
And the highlights, we were talking about the fun with the signs and the big costumes. That was a national trend now, where there's this idea that, so the rallies, and we live in a bifurcated information economy now, so that no matter what you say happened, the people on the other side can say the opposite happens. So they wanted to portray everyone as the Hate America rally was what the Trump administration government people were saying, our government about half the country, and that they were violent and all this. So everyone kind of dressed up in these harmless kind of chicken outfits and frog puppet things and stuff. Gary, what did that look like to you? I mean, you've been through rally after rally in your decades of public life.
Yeah, I've been to quite a few. I love the costumes. I love the signage. I love the fact that folks were out there not only just participating in the rally, but connecting to one another. It felt like a great place to be. As you suggest, there are folks who are trying to paint this as an anti-American, we hate America effort. But what you see when you're out there are folks who are trying to reclaim what they feel like is their country being lost.
And what are the key issues for you folks about how the country's being lost? Why was it important for 7 million people to take to the streets last weekend and now take it forward? What are you most scared of happening? Because it's hard to keep track of everything that's happening.
I'll start off authoritarianism. I mean, it's at our doorstep. My concern is, and as somebody who has I would say I have a front row seat, but I'm really on the front lines of the immigration battle at the national level. We spent at the National Immigration Law Center 10 months doing scenario planning last year. And at the end of it, when we looked at everything that Donald Trump threatened to do, when we looked at Project 2025, 700-page mandate, we realized that if he tried to accomplish even half of what he threatened to accomplish, we would lose our democracy and become an authoritarian regime. And we are seeing that happen. And I've been saying the path to authoritarianism in this country is being built on the backs of immigrants, that they will begin with immigrants, and they won't end with immigrants. Eventually, they're going to come after all of us. And sure enough, what's one of the first things that this administration did? They tried to change the Constitution with a red Sharpie, right? They went to Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, which has a painful history. And they said, okay, we're just going to get rid of birthright citizenship, right? Through an executive order. They invoked the Alien Enemies Act to remove due process constitutional rights for immigrants. They're deploying the military on our streets with the pretext of bringing down crime and controlling immigration. And what's around the corner is the invocation of the Insurrection Act, which they have threatened to do, and they've threatened to suspend habeas corpus. Now, if they invoke the Insurrection Act, what that means is that we will have the U.S. military engaging in civilian enforcement. What will it mean? It will mean that we could have military jeeps rolling up in my neighborhood of Fairhaven with the military dragging out families, immigrant families, and putting them in military jeeps, right, and seeking their deportation.
I feel for the soldiers being turned against their own citizens.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that happened. So the concerning thing in particular about the deployment in LA is that the president not just deployed the National Guard, he deployed the Marines. And our understanding is that there were a bunch of Marines who were really troubled by this idea that they were now, right, these are people who are trained, right, to deal with enemies. And now they were looking at Americans in the context of this is the enemy that must be annihilated.
So Harry's saying it's the same due process under Obama. So I was thinking when you saw in Chicago, in the middle of the night, they came with helicopters, ripped everybody out of a 20 or more story apartment building, U.S. citizens, little kids, and Venezuelan nationals, and thrown into custody, and take out zip ties from their apartments. Kids sleep in the middle of the night. How's that different from Obama?
Obama did not systematically deploy military forces to cities to engage in immigration enforcement.
And how about the due process aspect of that Chicago, when you break up people in the middle of the night and, hundreds of people take them out of their homes, many of them citizens, little kids, zip ties on the ground, put them in detention. Is that the same as the due process?
There was never an instance in which, and I was one of those people who called out Obama around his enforcement. The enforcement under Obama happened with ICE. There was a semblance of mandate to respect people's rights. There was never, ever a scene where you had a military-like takeover of a building where people were dragged out naked and treated in a violent way. Their apartments were completely wrecked, right? What we are seeing now, and Obama did not give the Department of Homeland Security $170 billion to ramp up their enforcement, right? Which is what we're seeing now. Under this administration, DHS has unleashed and unshackled ICE in such a way that they are emboldened to engage in a level of unacceptable violence and to strip people of their constitutional rights in a lawless and reckless way. And the administration, instead of engaging in some level of accountability, it's like they're cheering them on, right?
And Gary, what are some of the issues that propelled you to feel you wanted to speak at this rally and see this kind of action take place? What are you concerned about most?
Yeah, I think Kika touched on some of it, but I also think for me, it's wanting folks to still understand that there is the opportunity to push back, to speak up, and that you're not alone in doing so. I talk to a lot of people who are very concerned about where we are, and they've gotten a defeatist attitude, and I think that is very dangerous. And I think it's happened because of how quickly it feels like things have devolved. It feels like, just a few months ago we were standing in the America that people knew, and now we're standing in a totally new country and it's completely unrecognizable. So to me, it was important to be there, both as an elected official, someone who's been, I think, a very public figure, to say that we're not alone. We are willing to come out and put our faces out there, and to kind of try to help people to see that not only is it important to be there on that day, but this is an ongoing set of a body of work that we need to do, and that it needs to happen on all of the days going forward.
Caroline, are there other issues? I know immigration is definitely a big issue for you. You were on this radio station talking about how you were helping volunteers fill the gap with what happened with the resettlement agency in New Haven. What any other issues when you think it motivate you?
Yeah, I think, Paul, what comes to mind is I remember something that when I first sat down with Janice and Nan, again, two of the amazing organizers of the rally, they said something that was really important to them was that it brought a diversity of individuals together, independents, Republicans, Democrats, who all were coming together around a set of guiding principles. One, that wealth does not and should not equal power in this country. One seat should not equal complete power. And to Gary's point, that people still rule in this country. And that was the guiding spine of the rally that a lot of people could agree with. And I think something that was striking to me is some of the conversations that I had prior and since then. I remember one really sticks in my head. I posted this video letting people know that I was emceeing and really bringing people to the rally. And one of my, someone who I know who was a real Nikki Haley fan, so a Republican, reached out to me and said, "I'm so glad that you all are doing this. It's mind-boggling what's happening, and I'm glad that we're doing something about it." And I think that is what's important about showcasing millions of people, Democrats, but also independents and Republicans, who are saying, no, we're putting a stop to this. This is not the country and not the horizon line that we're heading towards.
We're talking about No Kings Rally and what happens next in our country and in our community, where three people are making it happen: Kika Matos, Gary Winfield, and Caroline Tanby Smith on WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven. So, Gary, you talked in your speech, as I understand it, that it wasn't enough to come to the rally, though you were glad to see everyone. It did give you a measure of hope. What do you want to see people do next? How do we take a rally and translate into political action? I've been thinking about this because of I know people bring up the march that was going to take place on Washington to desegregate the military after World War II, and because of the threat of the march, President Truman issued an executive order to desegregate the military. That civil rights marches of the 60s are believed to have had an impact on the passage of civil rights legislation. But that was when you had people in government who were of the same party, even though the activists just one part of the coalition, same the Vietnam War. What kind of action could a rally lead to have an impact when it's the people in power in opposition? I'm thinking of the Women's March in 2017 and what happened in the wake of that.
Yeah, I think rallies can lead to a whole bunch. So first, I think we have to think about what this rally was. This wasn't a rally that had just happened in Hartford or New Haven. This wasn't a rally that just happened in Connecticut. This is a rally that happened across the country. Had 7 million or so people. That's we're talking 2% of the population. And there's been this conversation about hitting 3.5% of the population. I think we need to be a little bit careful about that conversation because what Chenoweth and others were talking about in their research wasn't just a descriptive thing, but was about moving forward and continuing work, which is what I was hitting on Saturday. I think the issue is that you come to this point, you lay out what it is you're asking for whoever the target is to do, and then you are in a space where you can find your allies, people who you're going to be working with on an ongoing basis. You're in a space where you can think together, and then you leave that space and you do that. I think also the value of rallies is that regardless of what the president has said subsequent to the rally, they saw that there were 7 million people gathered on a Saturday afternoon. they know that the numbers have gone up since the last rally. That doesn't bode well for them, no matter what they're trying to do. And I think it's important for people to keep that in mind as we move forward. Listen, I have been a part of organizations that have sat around for years, meeting on an ongoing basis, educating ourselves, figuring out how we as a group think about an issue before we ever show up in public to do anything. That's the kind of long-term work we're talking about.
Well, I'm thinking long-term work, both of you, like Kika, when she helped organize locally rallies for immigrant rights, that then led to policy that she actually authored, where you had policies about what the police can and can't do with local immigrants, and ID card. I'm thinking of Gary. You had rallies about the death penalty. It took probably 8 years to get the people elected who could pass it. What's the analog here? What do these rallies lead to specifically? What kind of action? Any thoughts, Caroline, in New Haven or nationally?
Did you say the question again?
What are specific steps you see coming out of this to lead in those, given the dynamics?
Two things come to mind. I mean, I really echo Gary, and I also echo your examples of Gary and Kika. I didn't have the privilege to introduce Gary, but a special part of what it meant to MC was to specifically name what every single speaker has been able to do. And I think part of that leads into one of the action steps, which is really relational. You know, I think that part of what rallies can do and part of what it means to move forward is to rebuild our civic and social fabric. We've had a decline in membership in institutions, a decline in membership in various groups, churches, etc. And I think a rebuilding of that social fabric that connects us to our neighbors is critically important. I think another piece of that that's relevant is leadership that continues to be clear and consistent and confident about our values. And I think the protest and the rally was a demonstration of that, because we can win. We have examples here in the city of winning. I think about Esdras. I think about our beloved high school student that was kidnapped and taken away from us, and we rallied together, and he's back in his home.
Is this, I'm listening, I'm also thinking about, okay, so the people in the White House might double down when they see the rallies, even send out the military like he's threatening. But you do have influence over your own elected officials about how strong a stand it takes. And the mayor of New Haven has taken a strong stand based on what people want. And I'm wondering if that's part of the purpose, because I'm thinking like the Women's March. People felt a sense of power with how many people in the streets in January 2017. But that did not translate to kind of a follow-up action. But what felt different to me about, and special to me being in the crowd on Saturday, was just this feeling of hope that you don't have to give up. I felt there were a lot of people there who just felt like being there and seeing the other people, the combination of joy and determination, was just that people show up and see each other. What you're talking about having relationship with other people and just being involved. So I'm wondering if it's a little more amorphous. I'm wondering if it's, in addition to specific campaigns you want people to do, it's just the sense that you don't have to just doom scroll all night in your home, but that you can get out of your house and do stuff, whether that's going to be running for office, working on someone's campaign, going up to the Capitol, testified about a law, let your state senator and congressperson know. Justin Ellicker, the mayor, talked about a lot of people come from other towns. Let the people you have representing you know what you want them to do. What are your thoughts on that, Kika? Someone who's really studied and observed the way social movements intersect with policy.
Yeah, I'll go back to something I said earlier, which is that to me, the game changer here is the real possibility that unless Americans really step it up, we are going to lose our democracy, right? And for a long time, for as long as I've been alive, I think most Americans have taken our democracy for granted. Yeah. We have never been where we are right now in modern history, right? We are seeing the intentional, furious speed at which this administration is really trying to destroy the pillars of our democracy. And so to me, that is the game changer. So what does that mean? What gave me so much hope over the weekend was it really felt that people were actively participating and saying, we're here, we want to be heard, we want to be seen, and a real desire and hunger to figure out what's next. So what are the things that I think we need to think about at the state and local level? We need to think about what executive orders and laws we can advance to protect the most vulnerable and to protect...
So you're talking city and state.
City and state, right? So, for example, in Seattle last week, the mayor of the city issued 2 executive orders banning masks, banning ICE officers from wearing masks, ordering the city officials to get ready in case there's a deployment, and setting aside money to protect immigrants, right? I think we need to think about what else do we need to do? And I'm looking at Senator Winfield, who's been a real leader. What others, given what is coming at us, right? Given that the potential of the Insurrection Act is going to happen, given that they're threatening to suspend habeas corpus, given that the president is even threatening to deport U.S. citizens, what are the things that we need to do, both in the city of New Haven and the state of Connecticut, in case they deploy the National Guard here, in case all of these things come to pass, in case they come after yet another blue city and another blue state? And how do we codify, how do we create policies and laws to protect immigrants, to protect citizens, to protect our democracy? The other thing I worry about is elections, right? Like I said before, even Obama, who was very aggressive about deporting, he never deployed the military anywhere in the United States around enforcement. That very same military, and it's starting off with the National Guard, it will likely expand to other active duty military forces. That very same military that is now focusing its violence and aggression on undocumented immigrants will eventually likely pivot when the president says so, to say, oh, the elections are coming. Let's figure out how we're going to intimidate Black and brown people and Democrats and prevent them from voting. That
Gary,
is what I think we
is
need
that
to
on
think
your radar
about.
too, Gary? And any thoughts about what you could be doing at state level with elections or other reactions to deployment of military in our state?
So I think back to your question about the value of what we just experienced. I think one of the things that I was trying to get folks to recognize is, while we often think of government as good guys and bad guys, that's not really how it works, right? I don't really believe in good guys and bad guys. I believe you have people who showed up because they were interested for whatever reason, whether it be their school board or the roads or whatever, and they never imagined that they were going to have to deal with all of the issues that you then discover you have to deal with. And usually you're not really equipped to do it. And that we have a responsibility as the people to get people to pay attention to those issues, right? And so when you bring 7 million people out, the work that should be done after that is getting folks to understand that role and figure out for themselves, how do they do that, right? I don't think there's just one answer for what comes next. I think that grows up out of the continued conversation. In the state of Connecticut, we are talking about some of the things that Kiko was talking about. But the reality is that to this point, the governor has been reticent to do some of this stuff, if we're having an honest conversation. And I think that's because of the concern about what the Trump administration's response is going to be. And so you kind of have this push and pull, with me trying to pull on this thread to do as much as possible.
Well, the Democrats don't all agree. The mayor of Houston was interviewed yesterday. Ned Lamont, keep your head down. They're not going to think to you. You have the mayor of Boston says they're doing it to us anyway. You got to take a stand. Harry writes in, I understand what your guests want to have happen, but the National Democrats never brought about immigration reform. What is the National Party going to do that's different?
Appeasement never works. And to Harry's point, the reason that immigration reform hasn't happened is because Republicans have been very intentional about blocking any effort to advance comprehensive
I remember there was
reform.
a bipartisan bill that Trump, when he was running, said don't pass it because then he wouldn't have an issue to run on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
sorry,
Trump
when it
killed
comes
that.
to immigration, Harry is flat out wrong, and I have a ton of receipts to show him.
Yeah. Well, I was just remembering when President Trump killed as a candidate a bipartisan.
But also to the keep your head down thing. The last time I was on the show with Senator Cabrera, this was part of the conversation. And what I was suggesting, this was before Trump even became the president, was that that's exactly the wrong way to go. And I know a lot of people think it's the right way to go, but that is what has allowed him to take the next step. Every time you show them that they can take the step, that just becomes the new level from which we start. It's not we go back to that. That's the new level where we start. And the more that we show him that, the more ground he's going to take. You're just ceding the ground. Basically, we're saying, look, the state has power to do things that are legal, but because we may not be able to enforce them, we're not going to do them. And because he may take money from us, we're going to give up whatever rights, whatever ability we have. They're taking money from you right now. They're not ceding anything to you. They're taking from you. And I think it evinces that some folks just have never studied the history that we have. Because if you study the history we have, you know that from the very beginning you should be in a fight.
And any other advice, Caroline, anyone else for national Democrats and how the party, because there is a real debate going on about how they should position the
Yeah,
party.
I think two thoughts come to mind. I agree with Kika that I think we should be using every single tool at our disposal that we have. And I think this is both short-term and long-term. I return back to that question of our civic and social infrastructure. And maybe I think about that in part because I'm a local legislator. And I think about just how many tools we have at a local and state level to build a fabric of neighbors that know each other, that move across difference. Because I do still believe that if you get a cross-section of 20 people across the United States, they agree on a lot more than they disagree with. I still agree with that. And so I think about concrete policies, things like our small business community. Small businesses are the number one most trusted institution in the United States right now. 86% of Americans believe that small businesses are making a positive impact on our community. And thinking about these spaces, these bars, these restaurants, New Haven punches above its weight in terms of entrepreneurs who have built these spaces that are certainly providing service, but also are providing a place for civic life. And what I hear from neighbors every day is a hunger to feel connected to each other. And how do we bring all these different communities that we actually already have in our community to be a part of this movement together, to have a consistent set of values, but also have space to move across difference and to build again.
And before I let you guys go, I want to ask each of you to give a suggestion of something a listener can do in the wake of the energy and hope generated by the No Kings rally, and something specifically you're working on in that vein. I know you spent all day working on stuff. If maybe start with Gary, like a bill you're working on, something you'd like a listener to do to keep the energy going.
Yeah, well, I would hope that folks would find 3 or 4 people that they know and get into an ongoing community with them. We are working on an upcoming special session, and there are a lot of things that people want from us, but they're talking to themselves about it as opposed to really contacting the legislature. I will just remind people before I leave here that oftentimes on even the most critical things that are happening, very few, if any, people contact us. And that sometimes allows people who don't agree with you to say, no one contacted me. It's too easy to keep that from ever happening. And so I would implore people to always reach out, even if it feels like it may not mean that much. It means more than people think it does.
All right. And Barbara Fair writes in, kudos to Gary for being able to speak how power truly operates. Fear stops many of us from fighting back, so afraid of losing support from the establishment. Caroline, a thought of something a listener can do and something you're going to be doing.
The word that came to mind was join. Join a group. Join your community management team. Join a group of neighbors that meet for a breakfast club in front of East Rock Coffee, or play chess or play basketball on Saturday mornings. Join a group.
Show up and care.
Show up and care. And I think there's so many different projects happening in the city that are creating the conditions and the civic infrastructure, people to show up and care in a way that's meaningful and actually moves the needle. And
Kika, something you're working on these days and something like people to support?
Yeah, we sued the state of Tennessee last week.
This is the National Immigration Law Center.
Yes, the National Immigration Law Center sued the state of Tennessee for their deployment of the National Guard in Tennessee because they didn't follow their own procedures. They were so willing to appease the president. And we have a new Defending Democracy initiative that is all about fighting both for immigrant rights and fighting to protect our democracy. At the local level, I'll say a couple of things. I do encourage people to support Connecticut Students for Dream and Unidad Latina en Acción. They're really leading the frontline efforts to protect people who are now being kidnapped in broad daylight and vanished in our streets. And to Carolyn and Gary's point about being locally engaged, I really want people to encourage their neighbors and their family members to register to vote. That's a really easy thing you can do. Get voter registration forms, and every single person you know who's eligible to vote, ask them and help them register to vote.
And how can people support the work of your organization?
Go to our website. There's tons of stuff that you can do. Obviously, you can give. That's the easiest one. But we also have a ton of ways that people can get engaged directly, not just in Connecticut, but around the country.
So link up with other people you might have met at the rally or you hang out with. Talk about stuff you want to let your legislators know, and don't just assume they're there and they don't need to hear from you. join stuff and just do stuff. Show up and care and help the organizations that are on the front lines, like the National Immigration Law Center and Students for a Dream, and ask them what help they need. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right.
Sounds awesome.
When's the next rally?
Carolyn, when's the next rally?
Hopefully tomorrow.
Okay. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks to Harry Drost behind the controls, Kika Matos, Gary Winfield, and Caroline Tanby Smith. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.